Hello, today I want to show you a little bit about drawing with a Sharpie in order to create value and texture. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is how Sharpies are not erasable and they don't blend. So we have to figure out how to make it appear that there's different value. So make it look like there's more highlights or shadows. One thing you can do is use a thick versus a thin tip Sharpie. The thick lines will appear darker than the thin lines. You can also have lines that are closer together versus lines that are farther apart. Additionally, if you use overlapping, a lot of overlapping will feel darker than a little bit of overlapping. So creating different textures with these values, they all have different names. So one of them, for example, is called hatching. And hatching is this kind of mark making where you're just kind of drawing lines, and as they're closer together, they appear darker, and as they get further apart, they feel lighter. Cross-hatching is when you overlap them. So lots of overlap versus a little bit of overlap versus even less. Stippling is one of my favorites. When you make dots, as the dots are closer together, they appear darker, and then you can make them spread apart. With stippling, I often switch between my thick and my thin as well, so that I can make it feel denser with still leaving some of that white space. If you are stippling, please try not to go very hard and make like a tapping sound while you're doing it, because that can damage the tip of the Sharpie. So just a gentle touch to the paper is going to be enough. Scrawling is another one that's one of my favorites. It's basically just scribbling, and it's creating overlaps, but they're not rigid lines, they're very organic lines. And again, where there's more overlapping, you're going to find it's a lot darker. You're also welcome to make up your own. So if I do like this little wave pattern, if I make little waves that are very close together, it will feel darker than if I have bigger waves that are further apart. Oops. When you do get to the point where you are ready to draw an object like this apple, remember that you can make curved lines as well, and you can also start your contour with dots. So if I wanted to draw this apple, I might start with some dots going around the edge to establish my contour. If I wanted to use hatching or cross-hatching, I might make curved lines instead of straight lines. I'm going to recognize where I have shadows and where I have highlights. And I'm going to look at where that stem is here. I'm going to leave it lighter on this side. So I might use a thicker line over here where I'm drawing this apple. On the darkest spots. And then I will switch to that thin line where I have less shadow. I might throw in a little bit of scrawling. To make it feel really dark in some spots. And I might do some stippling on the lighter areas. If I do cross hatching, I'm also going to make sure that wherever I'm overlapping, I'm drawing in the shape that the apple grows. So I'm making curved lines instead of straight lines. And if I want to add in that shadow, I can as well. Sometimes creating a shadow behind the piece to help it stand out, I'll use a different form. So maybe over here I'm going to use the scrawling. And I'm going to stipple on the edge because it kind of fades out a little bit on the edge. And I'm going to make sure that wherever my highlighted sections are the brightest looking spots, and that the other spots are getting to be a little bit darker. Now, if I make like a really big mistake at some point, that's okay, because at the end I can just turn it into a part of my textures. There you go. Thank you.